Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this. I'm Alexandra Kennan, author of Urban Trails San Francisco, Urban Trails East Bay, and now Urban Trails Peninsula and South Bay. I'm sitting here with friend and fan, Lisa Duke. She's come on a bunch of test hikes. She's helped me out with this book. She's helped me out testing hikes in the city. Just a real big friend and fan of the writing and my hiking company. And Lisa had the fantastic idea to ask some questions about this book, the new book. So we're going to do some Q&A on Urban Trails, Peninsula, and South Bay. And, this video is now on YouTube. So if anyone else has other questions, I can respond to them there. Lisa, do you want to say anything about yourself before we get started, or you want to just jump right on in?
Oh, I just enjoy hiking in the Bay Area, and I've been a fan of your business and your writing, and I was excited to see the third book come out, and, I'm a fangirl.
I love it. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. So I've got your document up with your questions. Feel free to ask away.
Okay, I'll jump right in. This is your third book, and I was interested how you came up with the scope of this particular book in comparison with the others.
That's a great starting question. So I guess to talk about the present, we have to go back into the past. So my first book, Urban Trails San Francisco, is now going to hit its 10-year anniversary this year. Wow. This was a book. It was an unsolicited manuscript. I just sent it a book proposal to the publisher. And it was just, everything just lined up and worked out in that, they were interested in it. And somebody else in Seattle had submitted a similar manuscript for Seattle. And the publisher, which is Mountaineers Books, started thinking, what if we did a whole Urban Trails series? Now, the Seattle guy's books have taken off. He has done so many books. But this one did well too. I think I've sold probably about 25,000 copies of this, which is relevant because then the publisher said, well, that one's doing well. Maybe we can hit some other parts of the Bay Area. East Bay has so many people. It's got major cities like Berkeley, Oakland, Richmond, Fremont. Even, you don't think, oh, Fremont's a giant city, or Richmond. They have like 100,000 people. Berkeley and Oakland are huge. So we did that. And then, I go through phases where, you kind of get, I love writing the books, but you get a little burned out because it's 2-3 years of an extra job on the side. So I was just starting to think about what should my next project be. And the publisher came to me with the idea for a Peninsula. Actually, they called it Urban Trails San Jose. So, we know as Bay Area locals that San Jose actually has more people than San Francisco. It's got 1 million people there. There's only 800,000 or 880,000 in San Francisco. So we thought, well, these people have to like hiking too, right? There's hiking lovers all over the Bay Area. But in terms of the exact scope of this, so I decided with the publisher that the scope of this book would be everything within an hour drive of San Jose. At first, they did not want to include Pacifica and Half Moon Bay, which is the first chapter in the book, and which, funnily enough, ended up being the cover's Maury Point. I understand that's kind of far from San Jose, but there were 2 real reasons I wanted to include this area in the book. One was San Jose gets really hot in the summer. I consider Pacifica and Half Moon Bay to be the Bay Area's natural air conditioner. And this was an area that was also not covered by my other books. I would just be so sad if this were left out. So we did that. And then, individual hikes. I looked at all trails. I talked to friends. I looked at Google Maps, and I just looked at every major area and all the parks. Of course, you have to leave some stuff out, but Yeah, I think all those things are resources, people, online resources like All Trails, Google Maps. And yeah, looking at
I'm glad that you included Pacifica and Half Moon Bay.
I know that's your area, and honestly, it's mind-blowingly gorgeous. Selfishly, it's also, I live in San Francisco, as you know. This is 20 minutes, 30 minutes from my house, and it feels like I'm on a completely far away vacation. So it's really magical.
And I drive south to go on hikes, and I think people that are in the South Bay do drive as far as Pacifica to hike as well. One of my favorite hikes is the Bear Creek Redwoods Open Space Preserve, and that takes me a little while to get there, but it's so beautiful and has old growth, as you mentioned in your book.
I totally agree with you. And I think that is a newer park. It's awesome that you already went there. There's so much variety in the Bay Area. So it's just amazing. You can go from this oceanside hike like the Pacifica Half Moon Bay chapter and then be surrounded by old growth redwoods all within an hour from your house.
Yeah, it's an amazing diversity of environments for sure.
Yes.
I noticed in your book that you break up your hikes by easy and moderate and more difficult. And there seems to be a good spread of different hikes in each one of those categories. I appreciate that.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yes. Well, what's great about working with a publisher that creates a series is once they have enough books out, like all those Seattle books, there's a San Diego one coming out. Now we have 3 for the Bay Area. They come up with guidelines for you. Mm-hmm. And the general guideline they wanted to have was 50% being moderate, 25% being easy, 25% being hard. Now, as locals, we know it's hard to find a lot of easy hikes because it's so hilly here. I did my best. I think it was 16% of the hikes are easy. That said, let's go back to the cover, Maury Point. You can have an easy 1 mile hike that goes out to the ocean and back. And then you can also climb up. We were just talking about before we started recording the bootlegger steps, which are about 180 stairs. So you can really modify. This is a tip I would give to the readers, which is definitely look at the difficulty because, for example, I just happened to open to Montalvo Art Center. I love this hike. It's literally one of my favorites in the whole book. It is under 3 miles. But I guess it's rated moderate, but it has a 640-foot elevation gain. So the short hikes are not always the easy ones. I really recommend to people to look at either go farther or this one says make it shorter. Mm-hmm. So there are various ways to slice and dice these hikes to make them shorter or to make them longer if you're up for a bigger day.
Right. You can always combine things.
You can combine things totally. So, for example, Russian Ridge, it's so hard, the things you have to cut out. Russian Ridge is one of the most beautiful ridge lines in the entire Bay Area. Mm-hmm. But the trail I chose, I wanted to get like this hilltop viewpoint. But then I couldn't go to this other trail called Mendigo Hill on the other side of the park. So that's a go farther. There's just so many different places you can go, even within a park.
There is quite a bit. In Edgewood, there's so many different variations you can come up with. You picked a nice loop around the park, but you can zigzag a lot of different ways through that park.
Totally. And it's crazy. I was just thinking this when I was in Edgewood, this is 10 miles from San Carlos, right? If you live in San Carlos, you got a 10-minute drive. Last time I was there by myself, I ran into a coyote in the middle of the day. So another thing I want people to know, these books are called urban trails. And some of these are urban, some of them are paved, some of them you're going to hear traffic like Edgewood. The route I chose, you do get rather close to 280, but you can also 20 minutes later run into deer and a coyote. So
exactly. And I was surprised that some of the best wildflowers can be found in the trail that goes underneath the freeway and out to the other road over by Cañada.
Yes, it's amazing.
I ran into a snake the last time I was looking for wildflowers out there. I was like, okay, I think some of my friends won't want this trail.
That is always a good reminder to people that you are interacting, you're in the wildlife space. So always keep your, we love having our phones up, but, keep your eyes open. I'm glad I saw the coyote. It wasn't out to hurt me, but we do live in an area with mountain lions. We've got snakes, and it's always just good to be aware of your surroundings.
Be aware of what's going on around you, for sure.
Cliff sides, as we were talking about before we got on the recording.
Cliff sides are important. And one thing I was curious about was, were there trails that you do hike regularly or would want to have included, but for some reason you didn't include in the book?
Oh, there are actually so many. I had to cut out so many things. In general, I'd say when I was picking out a hike or a park, we were going to do 50 routes, which, there's so many more than that. There's probably 5 times that in this peninsula and South Bay region. I tried when I could. I looked for a good trail network. If there's just one simple out and back trail, I figure you don't need a book for that, right? Maybe it's nice for the book to tell you that park's there, but once you get there, you can kind of do it on your own. You can go to all trails for that. One, for example, was Burley H. Murray State Park. That looked really cool. It didn't have the most giant trail network. So I was like, someone can figure that out on their own. Also, for Pacifica, Montara, and Half Moon Bay, I didn't include Peak Mountain or Montara Mountain or San Pedro Mountain. And those are kind of obvious points that I would want to include. But if there are big things I didn't include, I figured, okay, 2 things. I can't include all these mountains because then I lose my ratio of easy, moderate, and hard. Those would all be 3 hard hikes. I also figured anyone intrepid enough to want to climb one of those peaks can probably do that on their own. And they're also not dog friendly. So I tried to, I love my dog. I love hiking with my dog. I still only got to just above half the trails being dog friendly. So if you don't like dogs, there's something for you. If you do like dogs, there's absolutely something for you. But there's always trade-offs to know about. There's also sometimes there are 2 parks right next to each other. So if you have been to Huddart Park, maybe you have or you haven't. Looks like you have. It is right next to this Flagler Estate. Now, at first I was like, maybe I can connect the 2 parks so you can hit both at once. I ended up picking Huddart Park for the book, and I used Flagler Estate as a go farther. It's right next door. It doesn't have as big of a trail network because it was someone's estate. It was someone's house. But so I try to, when I have to cut something out, hopefully mention something nearby so you could see it, or I left it out just because I can't include everything.
Well, I appreciate that you included suggestions for things to consider. That's always helpful.
Yes. Because when this book's over, when you've done all the trails, there's always more to explore.
So I think of myself as a seasoned hiker, but I think even when I've been at home for a while, I can feel a lot like a beginner hiker. Are there things that you can suggest to seasoned hikers that we might forget if we've been inside for a little while, or that we might not remember?
This is a great thing to think about. And so don't mind me, viewers. I sometimes took some notes on my other monitor. There are a few things I included in the book that are actually standard in these urban trails books now, but that everyone should think about. It's called, so the Mountaineers books publisher, they have their own list of 10 essentials. And if you have these 10 essentials, of course, we're not in the middle of Yosemite. There often is cell reception. You could often call an Uber or someone if you're in trouble, or a friend, but you never know if something crazy happens. You want to, be able to navigate. Either have your phone and a backup map. There's maps and all these books. Headlamp. You don't know if you get lost. How are you going to navigate if you end up later? Maybe you're just having a good time. You lose track of time. Maybe you're out in the middle of winter and the days are short. Headlamp. Opposite of that is the sun protection you need and the water you need, not only for yourself, but any pets you bring. Of course, they're not wearing sunscreen, but pets have been injured. I'm sure some have died in places like Mission Peak, which is in the East Bay book, but there's places like that, Monument Peak, anywhere around San Jose. It can be 90 degrees, no shade in the middle of summer. Think of water. Basic first aid. I don't really do the knife and fire or shelter. Those are a little more advanced than my longer day hikes, but I do always bring food. Sometimes I think I've just had a great lunch and then half a mile into the trail, I'm starving. Always bring food, always bring water, always bring, it's the Bay Area. The basics are bring some layers, both warm and cold layers.
Yeah.
So
I forget sometimes to bring a snack.
Always bring a snack. I mean, I like to have a nice cookie after the hike anyway. So I think the 10 essentials get you prepped. Another thing you and I were talking about, Lisa, before we started recording was just the weather. And, not every day is a perfect hiking day. We are blessed with our weather in the Bay Area. Most days are hiking days. But let's say there's been a giant storm. You may not want to go out that day. The trails could be muddy. The tree's roots could be loose and then a tree could fall. So it's 95 degrees. You want to go hiking. Maybe you go to Pacifica instead of, an exposed trail, Santa Teresa County Parks, where there's very few trees. So just, think about not only what's in your backpack, and I always do recommend bringing like a lightweight backpack to fit the 10 essentials, and think about what kind of day it is. And if you're going somewhere more remote, or maybe you're feeling a little out of your depth and you're alone, a best practice is always to give someone your contact info saying, hey, I'm just sending you a text. I am parking here on this hike and I will check in with you when I'm done. So if you don't check in, your friend or family member knows to get help.
I think that's important to remember. And then with the hot trails with the dogs, the trail is hotter for the dog's feet than it is for us walking, and that's easy to forget.
Yes, especially on those paved trails. That pavement and asphalt can get extremely hot. Think of your pets too. Sometimes if I'm in a t-shirt or a sleeveless shirt like this, I'm thinking, what must my dog feel like? She's wearing a fur coat. Maybe it's not the best day to bring her somewhere. That is a really good point. So one of the places in the book, Joseph D. Grant State Park, I love this place. It's got an amazing viewpoint over all of San Jose. We drove an hour to get there. It was June. We brought the dog. We hiked a few miles. She was too hot. We had to turn around for her, and we spent all that time driving there. So it's absolutely worth it to turn around for the dog. But think about that before you invest 2 hours in a drive for a hike you can't finish.
Exactly.
And there's no shame in turning around. You do not have to finish a hike. Do not be a completionist. Another difficult one is Monument Peak. I highly recommend doing that one if you're going to do it, or Mount Umunham. Try to do it in spring. At least Mount Umunham has some tree cover, but Monument Peak really doesn't. It can be extremely hot. If you're not feeling the elevation that day, if it's too long a hike, turn around. No shame in that.
Yep. Be willing to make good decisions even in the midst of your hike.
Yes. Get the ego out of there. You're always going to be happy that you arrived home safely.
Yes.
You can go out another day.
So on the same line of thinking, for new hikers, how can they the 10 pieces of advice and orientation and things like that. We talked about staying on the trail, for instance. That it's in, I have a search and rescue friend that I always think about him telling me it's always easier for us to find you if you stayed on the trail, because we may not know when you left the trail and where you went from there. So we want to stay on the trail for a lot of reasons, but to protect the environment, but also for our own safety. But are there other things that new hikers should know that maybe if they're following social media to do their hikes, or they've just picked up your book and they just head out, things they should know that maybe they haven't thought to do?
Yeah, I really love that. Yeah, I would, always stay on the trails, as you said, in case you get lost. But it's, the trails are where they are for a reason. People have architected these trails. Often, right off the trails, there's a giant patch of poison oak. And if you don't know how to identify it, I do have guidelines for identifying it in the book. I mean, a silly thing like that could, get you very, very sick, for example. So there's just so many reasons to stay on the trail, for the trail's ecology, the animals, the wildlife. Stay away from poison oak. People can find you. For new hikers, if you're just getting out, maybe pick something short. Other things to know, like look at the trail rules. Some of these trails close after sundown. Probably good reason for that. Maybe animals or search and rescue. Try to do something in perfect conditions first before you try orienting yourself around a park on a foggy day. There's I think just one hike in here that's like you're supposed to go in a specific direction, or at least you were during COVID, and now kind of people go in that direction. If there's anything like that, try to follow the directions given by the park. Definitely a big one. There is no bigger dog lover than yours truly, but I've seen so many poorly behaved dogs on the trail. And just because your dog is friendly does not mean it should be off leash. Off leash parts of a park, great. There's a huge off leash section in Edgewood Park. I mean, not Edgewood, Pulgus. Edgewood is no dogs. Pulgus Ridge is super dog friendly. And it does have an off leash voice control section. But there are reasons, again, I don't always know all the reasons. I assume the park knows the reasons. Keep your dog on a leash if there are regulations for leashes. There are horses on some of these trails. Give the horse space. Don't try to pass it. There is also a section on wildlife. This should not scare anyone. Like coyotes generally don't attack adults. I do, because I'm a scaredy cat of like, let's say mountain lions. I try to go in the middle of the day, or you go to a busy park. Like, let's say you're going to, I'll mention sometimes when there's a lot of people, going to be a lot of people on a trail, or it's like a super popular park, you can go any time of day. Like no mountain lion is going to be out. But if you're going somewhere remote, and I mentioned you might not see anyone, like there's one hike in the book, La Honda Creek Reserve. You have to get a permit. It's free to go. It's permitted, but it's free. You get a gate code. You feel really cool. You get to go into the secret gate. There's 4 parking spots there. You may or may not see anyone else there. I wouldn't really go there as a new hiker by myself. I'd bring a more experienced friend with me. So tons of stuff, but most of these are very safe. You'll see lots of people in bunches of them. So anything you want to add from your experience?
Oh, just know your limitations. Yeah. Because I find that my ability to do certain hikes is stronger sometimes and not as strong other times. And to really know how far I can go and try to go maybe half as far as I can go. And if I have to turn around, know to turn around, that I might not make a big hike that day.
That's such a good point. And it also reminds me, I bring hiking poles with me most places for stabilization. Let's say the Maury Point route in here, I have If you do the full thing, it has a crazy uphill and downhill. You might want poles. I do mention poles a lot in here, but they're lightweight. Just shove one or two in your backpack. Also, footwear. I've seen people be like, I haven't gone on a hike in a while. I'm going to go out. They haven't worn their hiking boots in 10 years. The sole literally has rotted off. Like I was on a hike with someone, the sole rotted off their shoe. Make sure you have good shoes meant for hiking. You know, some of these hikes are going to be great with sneakers or tennis shoes, whatever you call them. Other ones, I wear trail runners. I have these amazing Merrell shoes with so much traction. I mean, I feel like I could climb up a wall with these things. Make sure you have traction. There's a lot of places with little loose rocks that you could just slide down. So make sure your foot gear is ready to go.
Yep. Check your traction on the bottom of your shoes. That certainly helps for
Looking
sure.
flat, might be time for a new pair.
Yep. No, that's good advice. And then is there the best time to hike in the Bay Area?
Oh, I love this question because, well, I'd say there are no bad hikes, just bad seasons to do them in. What's going to be super helpful for folks, I think, is number one, there's a weather season section in the beginning of the hike, and there is something called trails by type at the end of the book. So the weather section, I'll give you a quick overview into 4 seasons, and then I'll tell you certain things you can find in trails by type. So winter, it's our rainy season. Now, our rainy season kind of spans a few seasons, end of fall through winter, beginning of spring. If it's raining a lot, you may not want to go hiking that week. If it has recently rained a lot, there are a few hikes that are really great in winter. These are hikes that maybe would be really hot in the summer, or two that I really recommend in the winter are Uvis Canyon, because there's waterfalls and they're just magnitudes larger. They're just orders of magnitude larger if you go in the winter. And Los Trancos I did the hike once in the summer. I was like, this is cute. It's got Bay Area fault history. I'm going to include it in the book. But then I did it in the winter again. And I was like, oh, there's a pop-up waterfall. I would have no clue there was there. So, another thing I think about winter is, trying to take on shorter routes when the sun's going down at 4. Spring, do every hike in the book in spring if you can. I mean, you can't go wrong. Like, the grass is green. This is the most beautiful time in the Bay Area. There are wildflowers everywhere, March, April, beginning of May. It's also not too hot. March 8th is the time change this year. You can hike till 7 o'clock. It's going to be light. So you can start to take on longer routes. Summer, be careful with your hydration. Hike early. I don't go at 7. Again, I'm scared of like the coyotes and the mountain lions that might be like still, doing their last hunt of the night. But go earlier if you're going to go out in San Jose, Morgan Hill, Gilroy. Make sure you're hydrated. Go to Half Moon Bay. Go to Pacifica. Go to San Francisco. It's not going to be warm here either. And then in fall, it's kind of like spring without the wildflowers. I think, you can have some hot days, but it's generally very, very pleasant. It may not have started raining yet. The time may not have changed yet. But, so you can hike a lot of the routes, but hot days, act like it's summer. Cooler days, if it's raining, act like it's winter. So that's the overview of that. And then in the back, what I would think about if I'm going to trails by type, which is at the end of the book, I would say, oh, it's hot out. Oh, let me look at the redwood hikes. Because even if something is, in the middle of the, skyline corridor, like El Corte de Madera, it could be really hot out in other parts of the Bay Area. You go to a redwood forest, you're golden. I have a section, hikes to avoid in summer, hikes with the best wildflowers. So those are sort of things to to think about and look at. Winter, pick a short hike. Spring, you can do the longer ones. Look for a good wildflower hike. All those things can be combined to get a perfect hike for each day and season.
And even in a redwood hike, you have to be careful. The trails that pop out into a meadow, it's going to be super hot out there potentially. And then you drop back into the redwoods. So
that is such a good point. If I'm thinking about Parisma Creek redwood, I love that hike because it is, it's like half covered but half exposed. But the way we do it here, it's the easiest way, I think, for a lot of people to get to it. You're hiking down and then you're hiking up. Yep. And it's steep and then it's exposed. So you don't want to overexert yourself on those combo redwood and exposed hikes. So definitely look out for that.
Yeah, you have to make it back up from the bottom if you go.
You do. Definitely look at the elevation numbers. So in every hike, there's a high point. Yeah. That tells you something. It doesn't tell you everything. Like some hikes start 2,000 feet in the air, but you're not climbing that much extra. Other hikes, you are climbing a lot. So I would look at the elevation gain for sure. Anything that's 900 feet, that's kind of a big hike for elevation. I know Parisma is, I'm pretty sure Parisma is over that. So you want to think about that.
Yeah, I found the Bear Creek one challenging, even though we were undercover most of the time. There's up and down in that hike, and it was a lot for me that particular day. So
it can be. And, just because you're in a redwood forest doesn't mean it's 50 degrees. It can get hot. There are some exposed parts of that route. And you need to make sure you're getting back. No shame in turning around. And for that route in particular, if you're a new hiker, make it shorter and just go to the old growth redwoods and back. And I think it's 2.5, just over 2.5 miles.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, so let's see what else I have. This is when I tend to talk to people on the trail as far as like greetings and stuff like that. Is that your style, or do you keep your head down, or what do you do?
I tend to be friendly on the trail. Sometimes I suss it out. I kind of look at the person. I'm like, are they going to engage? Are they looking down? Someone says hi, I always say hi. It's funny, I come from the East Coast, and when my dad has lived out here for a long time, we went on a hike and my dad was saying hi to everyone. And I was like, does he know these people? Because like on the East Coast, it may not be, or maybe I hadn't gone on enough hikes when I lived on the East Coast. People were less like, hi, saying hi to everyone. But here I say hi to everyone. And if someone doesn't say hi to you, don't take it personally. Sometimes they didn't hear you, or maybe they're on a hike because they had a bad day. It's usually about them and not about you, anything strange with you.
Yeah. I try not to let my feelings get hurt, and I just say hi as often as I can.
Yes. Same.
Let's see. So there's a lot of maps in the books. People may not know that you are involved in a lot of stairways in San Francisco, and you have your own Google Maps and stuff like that. Are there any links to any of these Google Maps, or is it mostly pictures of maps?
That is such a great question, Lisa. So good point. So yes, every trail, there are 50 color maps in the book. There are not links to them. I do have links to them. So if anyone wants to email me at info@urbanhikersf.com, I have a giant spreadsheet where I would map out a route on Strava. It helps if you have Strava. I have all the routes on Strava, not necessarily Google Maps. Mm-hmm. So I could send you my GPS, and I have both, often I both have the hike before I tested it and actually my own route of it, which is like, I would use that to say, oh, this hike, I did it in 3.5 hours and I did lunch. So it would take a hiker like me about, because I give time estimates. So I always look at that. That's how I get the elevation gain too. I use a GPS watch to get the GPX files. But yeah, people can email me for those. It's funny. What I do sometimes is I will look at a map either from a park or my book. If I, were not the author myself, I would go into Strava before I hike. I would map it out and then I could follow it on my phone. But there are also maps at almost every park start, at the parking lot. So I always grab one of those too, in case the cell reception doesn't work or my Strava track didn't upload properly for me to be able to follow it. Always have redundancy with your maps.
I always grab a map, even when I think I know the park, because sometimes I don't remember the park as well as I thought I did.
Totally. That happens to me too.
And then other times I'll run into people that maybe they're following along on their phone, but they have a lot of questions. And then I have a map to give them that they may not have picked up themselves. It always comes in handy to have that map.
Always comes in handy. I agree. Sure. And then a few places in the book, like Los Troncos, when you pick up the brochure, I can't remember if it's or you have to download this separately. There are two places where I tell you to look at an online resource before you go to the park. One is Los Troncos, because there is a self-guided tour of, I think it's 9 stops about the San Andreas Fault that you get to cover on that route. And then another one is Almaden Quicksilver, which used to be a Quicksilver mercury mine, and a local Boy Scout troop put together an insane, great brochure about all the mining equipment and all the tunnels you'll see on the way. I couldn't, with these write-ups, I had to keep them under, I think, 1,000 words each, including an intro and all this data that you see at the front, all the stats. I could not include all the history. So there's much more to explore. So that in some cases, I'll tell you to download something or go check out the brochure before you go, in case the brochures or those extra materials aren't available when you get to the park.
Yep. It always helps to orient before you go to a park and know who's managing it and look at the website. And if there's history, read about it, because maybe you can share it with your kids or someone that's hiking with you or whatever.
That's such a good point. Yes. You look beforehand. First of all, I always look at the route beforehand. I'm like, in my head, I have it. It's also on my phone. It's also on the map. So I have like 4 points of failure. Also, for something like, Arrastradero in Palo Alto, parts of that park just close in the rain. You cannot pass. They close gates. Always look at the park website before you go. You don't know if there's trails construction. You don't know if parts of the trail are closed. Just do a tiny bit of research. It can go a long way.
Yep. I tend to depend on Google Maps to tell me a lot of things, and it'll say, oh, this park's open, no problem. And I forget that I need to go to the site that is managed by the organization that's managing the park to look at, oh, did they just get hit by a storm and they closed half of their park because they have trees down everywhere?
Absolutely.
It's useful information.
I highly recommend doing that. And, all trails can also be good. Like, let's say I'm trying to figure out, okay, the trails look like they're open, but how muddy are they? Sometimes I'll go to All Trails. Now, these aren't taken all from All Trails, but like maybe let's say you are going to something in El Corte Madera, and one of the main trails that you see in my book, you can find part of it on All Trails. They'll say, oh, this park is super muddy right now. Maybe that's not one that necessarily gets really muddy, but I look for recent reports. I see a lot of people complain about bugs on All Trails. I don't actually have a problem with bugs. They don't bother me for some reason. But mud, especially for some reason in the East Bay, There is mud so thick that it can almost pull your shoe off your foot. You do not want to be out there for that, and you should check the trail reports before going.
I forget that other people use the trails besides me sometimes, and I use resources that are designed for hikers, but it is useful to look at resources that are designed for mountain bikers or for equestrians or whomever might be using the area. For instance, like the Pacifica sites, looking at the surf reports, those kind of things are often helpful that we wouldn't think of as hikers.
So helpful. And I'm thinking, that brings up another good point. I think it's Long Ridge Preserve is in the winter, the bunch of the trails are closed to cyclists. And I could be wrong on this is my memory. But if you're going in the middle of summer, there could be cyclists on the trails. So it's just like every park's a little different than the next. There are horses sometimes. There's, dog. Just do some, read my book and then check out the actual conditions and the current status on the park website.
Right. But I appreciate that the book is so current because so many of my hiking books are 20 and 30 years old at this point. So this is current information.
Fresh. And what's crazy is, some things have already changed. Now, nothing is out of date as far as I'm concerned with the routes I chose. But let's say what do I call it? Now I am blanking on the name. There was a trail. La Honda Creek Preserve. So there's like an I call it upper La Honda Creek, and there's a lower one because there literally used to be two parts of the park and they were not connected. They just opened a connector trail this summer. So that's not in the map in the book. But luckily, because that trail didn't exist, I wasn't using it for the book anyway. But yeah, things do change. Good to know. Note.
And then there's things like Skyline to the Sea Trail that might go through all of the parks you're thinking of, and it might be something you don't know about at all.
Yes, and I may have put that in the Castle Rock. At some point, I had that in the Castle Rock. I'll double check. And I have done that trail in a single day, which is crazy. Yes.
Skyline to the Sea?
Yes.
Wow.
I do have an explore part of the Skyline to the Sea Trail. 30-mile trail starts in Castle Rock Park, goes all the way to Big Basin Redwood State Park. That one took a lot of orchestration because we had to drive to Big Basin,
leave a car,
drive to the other side, hike 30 miles. Then we're tired. And then we had to take the ferry, the other car back to the start. It was a full day affair, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I think that's all the questions I have for now. I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, I appreciate you asking all these questions. I hope we helped readers get to know the book better. And I really enjoyed this time with you. Thanks so much. Get out there, get hiking, and email me if you have questions, comments, etc. info@urbanhikersf.com. And you can always find my adventures online at Urban Hiker SF. Thanks so much again, Lisa.
Okay, thank you, Alex.